And people in the room here are just kind of gradually getting back into their place, so there's a bit of a buzz in the background. So, I appreciate it's hard to cut your conversations off, but please come on back and we'll get started for the afternoon. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Bruce Uditsky, who's the CEO of the Alberta Association for Community Living, and many other credits to his name or to his life experience. And so you can find a short bio in the program that I'd urge you to take a look at. But rather than take any more time, I'll just turn it over to Bruce.
Thanks, Sharon. Good afternoon, everyone. Just to remind you, we didn't have turkey for lunch, so you should be able to stay awake, at least for a little while. I'm going to talk to you this afternoon in particular about the Rotary Employment Partnership and how we engage employers in creating employment, particularly for individuals with developmental disabilities. And this initiative was initiated primarily by myself and Wendy McDonald, who was here somewhere in the room, but I guess since I'm speaking, she's left for the moment. I just want to set some context. I'm going to move through some of these early slides. Oh, there you are, Wendy. So you can wave for a moment in case anybody has any questions, and some other of the staff that work at with the Rotary Employment Initiative are here at the front of the room as well. I want to suggest that in spite of the successful employment, support employment and other employment programs and efforts we have across the province, in fact much of North America, we have literally plateaued actually on the proportion of people, particularly with developmental disabilities, who secure employment probably 15 to 20 years ago. That is, in the last 15 plus years, we have not gained proportionately in the number of people with particularly developmental disabilities and to some degree others with disabilities with respect to their employment, which suggests that we probably need additional strategies. So we still find, when we look across individuals, that they experience a much higher rate of poverty, for example, or impoverished lives than is true for the rest of the population. Really high rates of unemployment and underemployment, sometimes approaching 70% or greater. When there's a downturn in the economy, sometimes the people are most likely to lose their employment. We've seen the limits of employment equity legislation. In fact, there's been very little ground gain through that. Historically, we've seen very narrow range of opportunities for people with developmental disabilities, as if somehow there's a connection between the nature of their disability and the type of work they're able to perform. We've seen the failings of wage subsidies that don't actually result in long-term employment, perpetual job readiness, and sometimes even I find a definition over employment. I remember spending a day at with TASH, which is the Association for People with Severe Disabilities in the United States, and spent hours arguing about what is meant by employment, when in the sense of the rest of the community, we talk about employment in terms of its ordinary explanation and all know what it means. So when I use employment in this presentation, it refers to employment exactly as it applies to yourselves. Real jobs for real pay, fully inclusive jobs as an individual, and working in the community. We've made efforts to try in the past to move from segregated programs to much more inclusive programs. That has succeeded to some degree, but not sufficiently, which seems to suggest that the future requires us, in fact, to avoid entering into those kinds of programs in the very first instance, rather than trying to work our way out of them. And I won't go through all of these points actually, because there won't be enough time to do that. I wanted to mention as well, there are some materials at the front of the room on the stage, some on the Rotary Partnership and some on inclusive post-secondary education. You're particularly welcome to come when there's a break and pick them up for those of you that are interested in more materials. And we have additional materials as well that's not here today. I wanted to mention, in addition to some of these other challenges, I mean, historically we've known some of the challenges around job coaches when we haven't been particularly adept at fading out paid supports. And then we have, in fact, a human resource problem in that we don't have sufficient people and sufficient funding to try to secure employment by having everyone have on-the-job support, hence the need to become more adept, as we heard this morning, at facilitating natural supports. And just to remind you that approximately 70% of jobs are not actually advertised. So if you're looking online or in newspapers, for those of you that remember those days actually, which just dates myself, I guess, the vast majority of opportunities for employment are not visible to us because for most of us, in fact, the way in which we secure employment is through our networks. And as you'll see later in the presentation, the idea that we've embarked on is really one of how to enhance, if you want, or provide for networking for people with developmental disabilities who ordinarily don't have the same network opportunities and relationships in their lives that the rest of us have the opportunity to experience. In terms of setting the context, I'm glad and appreciative of the fact that people have already mentioned that career development begins somewhat in infancy, if not before, when parents are thinking about what will my child be like when we have one. And not really to correct Brenda Lee, since she's not here to defend herself at the moment, we're probably on our third generation of individuals that are having fully inclusive education and going on to be included in the community, which would be true for my son, for example, who completed his inclusive education some 17, 18 years ago. So as a field, we haven't yet probably caught up actually to the dreams and hopes of families and the inclusive lives that they've been attempting to pursue. The point of this is to suggest that a career development, a career identity, employment preparation actually is part and parcel of a life that prepares you for employment, not having employment preparation programs later in life. As others have done, now we've just frozen a bit. We can't go on because I can't click a button. That's how dependent I've become on the PowerPoint, actually. As have others, I want to share just briefly a little bit about the Alberta Association and one of the ways in which we characterize ourselves as a community-engaged family advocacy organization, and with a particular focus for this presentation on our engagement and community capacity in forming partnerships. And our work sits, if you want, in a context of assisting individuals and families to pursue a normative, fully inclusive pathway over the course of their life to the degree possible, and to engage in community in welcoming and embracing in all aspects of community life individuals with developmental disabilities. And I think we've demonstrated those possibilities. Our challenge now lies, and hopefully with changes that we'd all like to see and with the direction of government, we'll see some of these efforts, if you want, scaled up to a much larger degree. So I do want us to remember that it can be, in fact, really limited in someone's life if we're starting to focus on employment possibilities when they're nearing the end of their teen years, for example, or beginning or in young adulthood. When most of you, if not all, maybe all of you, were growing up, the idea of being employed wasn't really an option. It wasn't about your choice, right? It was about getting a sufficiently good job that you could actually support your parents later in life, or whatever they saw as important to you. You were literally surrounded by, most of you, I know some people would have had different lives, but speaking more generally, if you want, most of you actually would have been surrounded by all kinds of things that were pushing you down a career pathway from a very early age onward. And our effort is to try to assist individuals and families to understand what those normative pathways look like. Just a quick illustration here, and in that, see all the places in which, in fact, opportunities for career development exist, from forging relationships, from inclusive recreation, to inclusive education, to inclusive post-secondary education, to having a home of your own. All of this is part and parcel of being employed, just as is true for each and every one of us. So there is a need for continuing innovation, because there are vastly more people who could be employed than is currently the case. And in fact, many of the individuals we assist to be employed were previously labeled actually unemployable, a term that doesn't really apply in our context. We look at everyone, even though we're sometimes greatly challenged by how to figure it out, as having the prospect and possibility of being employed and in a meaningful way. So the challenge really is ours, not theirs. I've mentioned some of these things already. I just want to remind you that what we know from the research is that one of the most significant variables in whether or not teens with disabilities are going to have access to employment after high school is whether or not they've had employment possibilities during high school years. Not work experience, not during the day in high school as part of a program or transition plan, but the same way other young people work in community on weekends or after school, having those opportunities, even to a small degree, actually greatly enhances the prospect for employment afterwards. And of course, we need more business community partnerships that I'm going to try to illustrate in a moment. So I just wanted to share, even though I wasn't asked to do this and break the rules a little bit, what career development looks like from the very potentially, it looks a little bit like from the very beginning of one's life. It's really important to have high expectations, I think, and a vision of that possibility. And what we experience in working with the thousands of families that we do is, in fact, too often families have begun to shut down the possibilities very early on in their child's life. And so I think our mission or part of our work, in fact, was instill hope and possibility and a greater degree of vision and high expectation in families. And I was in some of those meetings some of you have been at, for example, where we're somewhat distressed about some of the future funding in PED. I've heard too many families say, well, my son and daughter can't work. And that's actually a belief, not a reality. And then it becomes a question of how is that belief created and what's needed to be done to change that, that belief. So the expectations can't just lie on employers and the business community, but in fact rest upon all of us. So these are slides that I took. They're probably 30 years old when we began, in fact, to look at how it is we could facilitate the prospect of employment later in someone's life. And just to remind you, when kids are together, how often, so they could go on to maybe to be work in construction, for example, work for Stantec, where's Dave when we need him, and so on and forth. And just to remind you, if you think about the multiplicity of ways this goes on across those early years, right, and what happens to too many kids with disabilities is they're pulled out of those very powerful pathways, and then we think later in life we can replace all of that with some kind of human service intervention. And of course, having relationships, connections, and being able to network later on in order to be able to secure employment. So I'll move now a little bit more into the Rotary Employment Partnership and just show you a 30-second clip we did some years ago to try to illustrate quite briefly the nature of the partnership.
The heart of every great employee beats with a commitment to success, a dedication to do the job right, and a willingness to take on more. By doing their best, they inspire others to do the same. Like all great employees, adults with developmental disabilities contribute to the bottom line, and so much more.
So like everyone else, as you look around the room, we've developed a range of promotional materials, particularly directed by employers with the idea of employers talking to other employers. So the partnership I'm going to focus on for the time remaining actually is the Rotary Employment Partnership. But I want to remind everyone that it's just an example, right? That there are, I think, a large range actually of ways in which employers potentially come together to network that we could be tapping. Ourselves as an organization, we simply don't have the resource capacity, if you want, to build a relationship with every single employer network that exists in our communities. And so in fact, it takes us as a community to build the bridges to those employer communities. So I don't want people to think somehow what we're doing here is simply restricted to Rotary. It's in some ways what we fell into in an unplanned way. It's worked for us, and we think it can in fact work for others when looking at other employer networks, if you want. So for those of you that don't know, which is true when I encountered this actually, I was quite willing to admit I had heard of Rotary but really had no idea what it was, hadn't drawn my attention or interest, much to the dismay I think of Wendy, who actually grew up basically as a Rotarian, and in fact brought the notion to me as a Rotarian herself, as the president of her club, She was inspired by the then Rotary International president, who was encouraged Rotarians to figure out how to increase employment for people with disabilities. Wasn't really sure, I think, what Rotary could do, but in a sense brought the question to me with respect to what could Rotary do, which meant I had to spend a considerable amount of time learning and understanding Rotary. And part of what I want to emphasize today that I don't think gets enough attention in my view is the necessity to really use a community development approach where you spend what might almost seem an inordinate amount of time understanding your partners, their culture, how they speak to each other, how they associate, and what in fact is going to touch their hearts and change their minds about employing people with disabilities. And I will in fact suggest that very little, if you want, of our funding mechanisms actually provide for that or sufficiently support and understand that. So in some ways, we have to be, I think, and advisedly so, committed to achieving real outcomes for people. But part of a real outcome, in fact, is having that relationship and understanding with respect to your partners. And that's as much an investment in achieving employment as anything else we might be encouraged to be supporting. So Rotarians, there's lots of them around the world. Some think it's actually a cult trying to take over the world. And the secret handshake won't be shared today. But nevertheless, there are a large number of Rotarians. There are dozens of clubs in the Alberta alone, many dozens of clubs in Alberta alone. And essentially what they are business leaders, managers, owners, professionals who come together primarily to connect with each other based on their vocational backgrounds. That's the root of Rotary, and to try to figure out in a way how to improve life in their local communities as well as contribute to change internationally. Now, one of the advantages of connecting to Rotarians and Rotary clubs is not only that the root of Rotary is based on the principle of people of different vocations coming together to share and network and to utilize their vocations in order to make a difference in the world. In effect, not suggesting every Rotarian lives up to this, actually, but nevertheless, in terms of the culture of the entity, it's incumbent, it's an expectation upon Rotarians that they will use their career, their vocation, their work identity to make a difference in the world. And what we do as the Alberta Association for Community Living, in effect, is give them an opportunity to realize that expectation. In a way, we give them an opportunity to fulfill their responsibility as a Rotarian and therefore capitalize on both their interests and also being able to create additional opportunities for people with developmental disabilities. So we don't have to enter into a conversation with Rotarians about the meaning and value of work. What we have to do, I'll skip ahead a little bit, I think. What we have to do, in effect, is to understand that to try to build the bridge to Rotarians in many ways means, as business leaders, managers, owners, that the interests of families who have sons and daughters, in this case with developmental disabilities, or people with disabilities themselves, is no different than their own. When we are able to cement that common identity between Rotarians and individuals with developmental disabilities on the basis of a desire to work, to contribute to what it means not to have that opportunity, given their understanding of employment at work, okay, we can motivate them in engagement and in creating employment opportunities. If they think this is some kind of just corporate social responsibility or something to do out of the goodness of their hearts, then typically it might result in some jobs, but those are usually not long-lived. I've already said some of these things. I think I'm just conscious of the time. This is moving down, not how much minutes I started with, right? There's a little hint for Sharon to pay attention to my time, maybe. So what we do essentially with Rotary clubs, in terms of understanding their culture, is we build a relationship with them. Now, over time, we've extended that to build a relationship with Rotary as an organization. And I won't go too much into depth, but like all entities, especially of this size, they do have an organization. So they're organized into districts. There's a district governor that's elected every year, district governors that are being elected, to come in the following years, etc. There's a president of every local club. They meet weekly. And ordinarily, Rotarians fund short-term projects. The idea of having a long-term commitment to something like a partnership with us is not too typical in the world of Rotary. So we had to build a sufficient relationship over time to move from potentially an incidental project to one that becomes as embedded as it is today in the very culture of Rotary, at least in our province, and hopefully beginning to spread to other parts of the world as well. As a result of that, we have a longer-term engagement from Rotary to commit to creating employment possibilities for individuals with intellectual disabilities. But nevertheless, even though we have Rotary champions, as an association, as a community partner, we have to work continuously to ensure, in fact, that the motivation, if you want, and the engagement continues to be sustained. What we did find initially in talking to Rotarians is that it wasn't unusual for them to be a member of a club who was already hiring somebody with an intellectual disability, but not having shared that with the club, or the club understanding how they could be engaged more collectively in creating additional opportunities for people. Typically, Rotary Club will hear almost weekly from one good cause in our community to another, almost all asking for money. And it is true that Rotary has a fair amount of money to dispense. Actually, it's one of the largest charitable entities in the world. But we made a decision from the very beginning, because it's not that we don't need money as a nonprofit, it was said this morning. We made a very early decision from the very beginning that what we needed actually was their personal engagement and their business connections. And that shifted, if you want, what Rotary would typically expect from a presentation, and actually enables us to more deeply engage them, because now they're personally involved in assisting people, in fact, that have changed lives. So essentially the way this works is Rotarians, clubs, and districts make a commitment to foster employment possibilities. They don't necessarily understand what's a developmental disability or who it is we're necessarily talking about until they've had an opportunity to meet people and become engaged with them. And we're particularly interested in tapping both their own enterprises when they have one, but in the sense in their networks. And over time, as an individual, as you heard other employers express today, become supportive of this idea, have positive experiences, and open up their networks to us, which means, in effect, you're talking to a business person and saying, I want you to open your contact list. If you're as old as I am, you might say your Rolodex. So just checking to see if there's anybody my age in the room, for example, right? So this is not something people easily and readily do, actually. You know, if I come around to the table now and ask you for all your networks, you'd want, what does he want? What's he going to say to people, etc. But that relationship of trust that we build with them allows them to do that. Therefore, each individual Rotarian, given the strength and size of their networks, has an amazing untapped capacity to create employment possibilities for individuals with developmental and potentially other disabilities. And so in that way, and if you want, we're supplanting the lack of networking in the lives of individuals with developmental disabilities with the networks that Rotarians have access to, and from there begin to build more employment possibilities. When we have the potential for a job, the work isn't any different than what you've heard earlier in the day. We'll go into a place of employment, help them think about where the job might be located, what the work might look like, how many hours a week might work, what kind of supports might be necessary, create and carve out a job, figure out the natural supports, etc. And that capacity to go in and work with businesses, of course, is funded by PD. So we have one more clip here to try to illustrate some of this. Actually, I'll just introduce it a bit more while I'm thinking about it. It's a way of illustrating, just to move ahead a little bit, about what happens when employers become engaged. So this was one of the earlier employers in the Rotary Employment Partnership. It's Jeff Polovic. I'm hoping that's the clip that's coming up because I don't have a label on here. And Jeff is the founder and owner of Driving Force, which has probably a dozen locations across the country and a fair number here in Alberta, and was named a few years ago one of the 50 best managed companies in Canada, was in the midst of opening a brand new building, and had the premier of the day there, the mayor from the city of Edmonton, etc., celebrating this accomplishment, and was interviewed by the media about his success. And it's a way of seeing how you can translate an engaged employer actually into an advocate for employment, and in ways in which we probably in fact couldn't buy this kind of advertising. It takes a minute to come up, I think.
An Edmonton-based company is being recognized on a national scale. Driving Force Vehicle Rentals has been named one of Canada's 50 best managed companies, and it's not just for their business leadership. As our Sonia Sunger reports tonight, it's also for raising the bar in hiring workers.
Jeff Polovic started Driving Force Vehicle Rentals nearly 30 years ago, and at the opening of the company's new headquarters, he was recognized as a leader, setting an example for other businesses by hiring people with special needs.
I think we as businesses have a social responsibility to look at different people in the community.
Driving Force has been working with the Rotary Club and the Alberta Association of Community Living to hire people with developmental disabilities, giving them the opportunity to grow within the company.
But we have two individuals in particular who are still with us, who are a very, very key part of our organization. They've been a great morale booster for people. Scott is a young fellow who works in our cleanup crew, works with our cleanup crew, and everybody has almost taken him under their wing.
Scott Boyenga started with Driving Force over 2 years ago, and co-workers say they love having him around.
He just lifts everybody up when he's laughing and joking around, you know, and he does his work, you know. It's not like he does any less than anybody else. It might be, you know, take a little longer, but it's part of the game.
Another special needs worker here at Driving Force admits she's had problems in the past with job interviews. But life is changing, and working here has been a confidence booster. After Jill McGinn was hired, she was able to bring home her first paycheck.
I just always had trouble, and like no one would really give me a chance. So for a while, I pretty much gave up.
Jill McGinn works in administration and has become an integral part of the team.
These are young people who are interested in working, they want to contribute, and they really do help us be a better company.
All this leaves the man in charge of this company hoping more businesses will give people with developmental disabilities an opportunity to succeed.
So there's this difference between my standing in front of a podium, for example, saying to the business community, you know, you don't know what you're missing out on by not hiring individuals with developmental disabilities, and someone, in fact, who's an employer in an eminent position in our city, for example, having, you know, chaired the Edmonton Eskimos, now on the board of Fort Edmonton, et cetera, saying, we've done this, it works really well for us, and in fact improves our bottom line and our workplace culture, and you need to be doing this. And so with him as an advocate, we have much more opportunity to advance employment than we would with, for example, or do with someone like myself. I've said some of these things already. There are 5 partnerships actually that exist in 5 communities in the province at the moment. They are only successful to the degree, in fact, we're able to find local Rotary leadership. We will sometimes take years, literally, to discover that leadership, foster it in that community, before we would embark actually on creating and trying to sustain and advance a partnership. That's the kind of time, effort, and attention that's required to have a community partner. What I want to do in the time, that's few minutes that are left, is just share some of the results with you. Obviously, in this short a time, there isn't a way to actually explain how this works so much as it illustrated. So to date, we've created 235 jobs across the province. In effect, in terms of the staff that we have, we would create 1 to 2 jobs a month for each coordinator that we have in a community. The average wage is over $12 an hour. What's been fascinating is the range of jobs. It's really hard to characterize now where people with developmental disabilities can and can't work. Manufacturing, engineering, hospitality, technology, et cetera, and so forth. So really a vast array of job possibilities for people. On average, an individual with developmental disabilities income increases by double, and many of the individuals we work with were in fact not being considered for employment. When we look at the data and the results in terms of the cost savings and the reduction of support, and I should mention that over 90% of the individuals we help secure employment through this partnership are naturally supported. So we require very little paid support on an ongoing basis to achieve this, and I think that's a result of both the nature of the partnership we have with the business community, as well as the skill and the art we've developed in facilitating natural supports. So the cost of this initiative is pretty much cost neutral, if not cost beneficial to government, and we can show that in hard data. Sharon said when she came on stage, she comes with a hook. So I'll just finish the results with you as I watch the countdown appear before me. We see, as you have here, employers and Rotarians becoming advocates. Many, as Blair and Dave described to you, find their workplace culture is actually transformed. The average length of employment is now well over 4 years, actually. And the difference is you have not only Rotarians contributing to transforming lives and communities, families having greater hope and possibilities, but adults with developmental disabilities having a more meaningful and contributory life. The challenge is to the greater degree to harness the capacity and commitment of these and other business leaders to create hope and belonging for thousands, and doing it one life at a time. Thank you. I think I actually had 6 seconds left.
You had 6 seconds left. We didn't use every ounce of the time, but thank you very much, Bruce. So now is an opportunity for you to ask questions. We'll start with any in the room. Crystal will come and bring you the...
Anybody want to become a Rotarian? We can start there.
Actually, some people are too shy to raise your hands, so as I went about the hall, people gave me questions, so I'm going to use one of them. And it's very timely, given your comment about career identity starting in childhood. This question is, are there support and resources available for youth aged 14 to 18 to find meaningful part-time employment like typical teens?
That's a really good question, and to my knowledge, we are severely, if you want, lacking in that area as a province. We have seen projects over the years demonstrate the value of supporting teens to have meaningful employment. However, no one has, if you want, in terms of government departments from federal to provincial, assumed or seen themselves as having a mandate for responsibility in that area. So with the formation of human services now having responsibility to a greater degree across disability and across age, we have entered into conversations and discussions with them about initiating some efforts, in fact, to help young people, youth, high school age, to secure employment while still in high school, and essentially to engage youth without disabilities to facilitate that possibility. And should we be successful, I'd be happy to share that news as widely as possible. But it is something sorely lacking at the moment. And as a result of which impedes the possibilities of employment for young people when they finish high school.
Great, thank you. Anyone else in the room?
There's a hand way
At
back
the
there.
back?
Yeah.
Dora, thank you.
Can you talk about the funding cuts and how they will affect working individuals and those that can't or don't work?
Yes and no. That is, I could, will I? I think the impact of the funding cuts, as I understand them at the moment, okay, have not really, we don't really understand those impacts. On a general level, I'd say they're quite severe, actually, and worrisome. And I don't see how, with the degree of cut that's being required at the moment, we could in fact systemically, if you want, advance this or most of the other causes we're interested. There's clearly the possibility for some funding for projects and small initiatives in this government direction. But if we want really larger scale change, we in fact need a different process of funding that change than trying to expect change while we reduce supports. So I see us in fact at the moment in inherent conflict between wanting to move forward, having some really good ideas and prospects, some limited means of achieving those, but on a much larger scale, people being really apprehensive about what the cuts will mean.
Thank you. Bruce, a question from the webcast from Jill. If someone's interested in the Rotary Employment Partnership who live in smaller communities where there's currently no partnership, what do you suggest that they do?
Hi, Jill, whoever you are. What I said, we are always interested in trying to stimulate more possibilities in other communities. The simplest thing to do is just to contact us, and we will look to see if there are potentially interested Rotarians and take the time to try to generate that. And if we can generate interest in from Rotarians, the possibility exists of moving forward. I think the thing to be cautious about, it's not difficult to approach a Rotary Club and ask for some funding, for example. Tons of people do that. Or potentially ask them for 1 or 2 jobs, and you might achieve that. But if you want to achieve the cultural shift and transformation of an organization to have of this nature, to have a long-term commitment to creating employment possibilities, then it's a different kind of work that you need to think about. So just, if you contact us, we can talk about it further.
This is one that you didn't talk about specifically, that I heard anyway, but it's come in from the website, and I'd like you to take a crack at it if you could. One of the biggest barriers we find, it's from Celafran. One of the biggest barriers we find is transportation fees and cost. Handy bus, specialized transit, taxi are more than what the hourly wage is. If working a 2 to 4 hour shift, it seems not worth it. Looking for suggestions on how to get past these transportation barriers in our small community that does not have public transit. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an important question, of course, and many people live with that. I think, and it may be an unfair advantage, but it is a fact that we will not let, in terms of our work, anything like some kind of logistical challenge prevent somebody from being employed. So we will figure it out, and we will apply our own resources, if you want, over above anything we might receive from government in order to facilitate and enable that employment to take place. If it means hiring a driver for somebody, we would do that, for example. If it means, I'm not sure we could fund municipal transportation, to be honest, but in terms of addressing an individual challenge, we're more than prepared to figure that out, because the last thing we want is for someone's, in fact, maybe a long period of their life to be diminished by virtue of the fact that there's, if you want, a material glitch that we can, in fact, address much more readily than we can address whether or not there be an employment prospect. So we don't want to sacrifice an employment prospect because of some material issue that we can actually solve.
Great, thank you. Is there one last question in the room?
Does that mean I get to talk more?
It means you get 30 seconds of last comments.
Okay, just quickly, then I'll repeat myself. I think not only is it essential to figure out how to foster a greater degree of these partnerships with different business communities than just Rotary, it's absolutely essential that we move from and transition from employment preparation programs and other life skills training and so on to actually a life that prepares people for employment, literally destines them for employment, as has been true for almost every one of you in this room today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruce. And while our next speaker is coming up, I'll just thank Bruce and give him a small token of our appreciation, and look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Thanks, Sharon. Try and get out of the way.
The other point I wanted to make while we're in transition here is there's additional materials at the registration table outside, in addition to the AACL resources here that Bruce has brought. The Fetal Alcohol Syndrome Disability Cross-Ministry Initiative has several brochures, pamphlets, annual reports, their evaluation from their 5th year. And so one of the things that struck me, and I forgot to ask Bruce, I was going to do that, because each different disability group has created some initiatives which could be looked at to see their application across the whole pan-disability spectrum. So please do pay attention to the materials both here and on the trade shows. I know Sandra has some at Alberta Works as well, so please take them away. I'll just ask Aaron Black to introduce our next speaker.
Okay, sharing from personal experience, Miles Himmelreich speaks about living with FASD on a daily basis, his journey growing up, and what he needs in order to have success today. Some of the topics Miles discusses are how FASD has affected him and his interaction with his environment, issues and barriers he has experienced, his capabilities, his strengths, and how to support people affected by FASD. Please join me in welcoming Miles Himmelreich.
Hello. So before I get started, I'm just going to ask you, on your tables, there should be some noisemakers as well as bubbles. So right now, as I talk a little bit here, if you want to grab those bubbles, I didn't think to check before, but they're sealed. So if you can open those bubbles and try to take out the wand. We were trying it a little bit earlier and it was a little difficult, so hopefully you can do that. But if you can do that while I get set up here, that would be great. I didn't say use the noisemaker. So, I have to be honest. I was a little nervous coming to do this presentation. I've spoken for quite a number of years now at many different conferences and at schools and many different places. But reading this was about technology and stuff like that. I was a little nervous because I don't know a lot about technology and I'm not the best at it. Try to pretend I'm young and hip and I know what's going on, but I don't always know about technology. I asked my friend, some stuff about it so that I could pretend I knew what was going on. And I said, "What's tweeting?" And he's like, "Oh, he told me, it's when people tell exactly what they're doing and, every little thing that they do." And I was like, okay. So I didn't know how to do it on my phone or whatever, so I thought I would just do it out loud, so I was walking down the street, I'm like, "Miles is crossing the street, hashtag now." So that's as close as I got to tweeting because I still don't understand it. So hopefully I can kind of integrate some of the stuff that I've learned and you guys will be able to learn how I've been able to be successful in many different areas in my life. But what I want to do is give you a brief history of who I am. So, how do I go forward here? The green button. Oh, nope, that's the go button. Which one, sorry? Oh, good. I feel good about technology now. Oh, Okay, thank you very much. Oh, awesome. Thank you very much. So, I was born in Calgary. My mom was originally from a reserve just north of Edmonton here called Colleen Lake. She moved to Calgary when she was in her later teens. For the first couple months of my life, I was in and out of different foster homes. My mom was struggling with addiction issues and unfortunately got involved with the wrong crowd. So by the time I was 2.5, I was in 7 different foster homes. So it's made life difficult at a very young age. Very hard to trust anyone's going to be around when people seem to be leaving. You know, every couple of weeks you're with this new family and then they're gone, and then you're back home with mom and then she's gone. So at the age of 2.5, I went into this foster home and I stayed there for a couple weeks. Then it turned into a couple months. And eventually it turned into about 1.5 years. And I was living with Brian and Christine. And they had a couple children that they were taking care of in their foster home, as well as a couple children that they had of their own. And they sat me down one day and said, "What do you think about being part of our family?" And I thought I was part of your family. And they said, "Well, you are, but we'd like to make it, legal on paper." And I said, "Okay, that sounds good." And so I thought, this will be nice. I'll have a mom and a dad and brothers and sisters, and it seems like they're staying around for a while here. So we'll see how long this lasts. It's nice. So we went through the adoption process. Took a little bit longer, and there was a little more difficulty than what we suspected in the beginning, but the adoption went through. So this was really good for me. Around the same time as the adoption, Brian and Christine sat me down and said, "What do you think about a new name to go with your new family?" And I thought, okay, that sounds good. When I was born, my name was Terry. And so they said, "You can pick your name, whatever name you want it to be." And I was like, wow, that's cool. So here I was, just this little guy, and I thought, all right, I get to pick my name. So I thought about it for a while, and I always watched Saturday morning cartoons, and I loved watching, like G.I. Joe and Transformers and not Strawberry Shortcake. My sister made me watch it, even when she wasn't home. I don't know how. Anyways, so I thought, okay, I get to pick my own name. So I thought about it for a bit, and I went up to Brian and Christine, my new mom and dad, and I said, "Okay, I know I want to be called He-Man." They said, "No, we cannot call you He-Man." I was like, "What? He-Man Himmelreich? Oh, that's awesome." They said, "No." I was like, okay. So I thought a little bit longer, and I said, "How about Smiles?" And they said, "Okay, that sounds good. How about we change it a little bit and we call you Miles?" And I said, "Okay, sounds good." So, and I'm glad they did change it, because that would have been a little weird, going junior high. "Hi, ladies, I'm Smiles." And now I'm alone. All right. So here I was. I thought, okay, so things are good now. Got this new family, and I went on to school, and things started to be a little bit different for me. And I realized this, especially about grade 5 or 6, that just didn't seem to fit in. Wasn't like the other kids. Wasn't sure exactly what was going on. My parents, when they adopted me, explained to me, that I had this disability called FASD. At the time was FAE, fetal alcohol effects. And so that I might have problems in learning and may not learn the same way or at the same speed as the other children. So, I thought, okay, didn't really understand it. Went into about grade 7 and was really thinking, this is getting really tough, Going to school every day and experiencing the same problems over and over, but not understanding why I was experiencing these problems and how to deal with them. I didn't understand what was going on. To give you an example, what I'd like to do right now is introduce my friend Denise, and Denise is going to help me. So, what I want you to do, Denise, is pick up the bubblegum machine and hold it up. So, this is the bubblegum machine. This is going to represent my brain, okay? So, first class, you have cooking. So, if you can put they're erasers that actually look like food. So, if you can put those in, you go into cooking, you learn how to cook, the ingredients that you need, different recipes. So, you get all that information in there. And then you go to language arts. So you learn about how to form proper sentences and paragraphs and how to write. So you get that information in your head and, okay, sounds good. From there you go on to your next class. In your next class you have history. And for history we're going to use the lizards because they represent dinosaurs, I guess. So you learn about history and where the world's come from. So you get that information in there and you're thinking, okay, I got this. Then you go into math class and you learn how to add and subtract, cross multiply and divide. You're getting all these different numbers and all these different equations in your brain and how to do them. I'm learning the steps, I understand the steps. Okay, I think I've got it, I think I understand. Then I go into gym class. Now, gym class, we're playing baseball and basketball and learning how to dribble a ball and the different sports and how to do the different sports, all the different steps involved. Then you have lunch. You hang out with your friends, you know, it's a good time. Then you go back and now you have to go back to math. So, now, Miles, how do you cross, multiply, and divide? Let me think. Well, I've got the information up here in my brain. I know it's up there. I did it earlier today. Now, what would come out of my mouth? Denise, can you open what would have been my mouth at, oh, no, the yellow part, which represents my mouth. What would come out? Nothing. Now, you can see the information is up there, just like the information was up in my brain. But I didn't know how to go to that math file, in that math category, retrieve the information, and be able to speak about what the information was. Did I have the information? Did I know it? Yeah, it was up here. But it was all jumbled up with everything else I had learned that morning. So I didn't know how to say this is how you cross, multiply, and divide. So this was very difficult for me, but again, I didn't fully understand this. What else was going on for me at the time was what I call bubble trouble. Okay, for me, it's like I feel like I have hundreds of bubbles in my body, making me move all the time, and I can't sit still. I can't control them, so I'm constantly moving and moving. It's kind of like Grover on Sesame Street when he's like, and he's running around. That's how I felt, but I couldn't control my body. So I had all these bubbles going on in my body, but also as I sat there, there's different things going on in the classroom. Denise, what I'd like you to do is, you have a pen and paper here, and what I want you to do in big letters is write your name when I say go, and go. Do, 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 do. Okay, let's see. So you wrote name, okay. Okay, when I say go, I want you to write your name again. You know what, but this time, let's see. How about we change what you're using? Instead of that pencil, what else do we have that Denise could use? Here, let's use this pencil here. Those pencils made of rubber. So, when I say go, I would like you to write your name again. And go. How's that going? Not well. No, not too good? All right, let's see. We want to show the audience. That's, yeah. Okay, so when I say go, I want you to write your name again. This time we're going to give you something else that might help you. How about some different hands to help control the pencil itself, okay? Maybe these hands will help you hold the pencil better and you'll be able to write better. So take that pencil again, and when I say go, I want you to write your name. And go. All right, you know what? How about we try one more thing? What else do we have that might help? Oh, glasses. Glasses often help us see better. How about we just push the button on the top there and see what happens? Okay, now put those glasses on. Grab your pencil. And please write your name. All right. Now, what I'd like you guys to do, on your tables, you have noisemakers and you have bubbles. So what I'd like you to do is take those noisemakers and take those bubbles, and I want you to blow those bubbles. And when I say go, I want you to make noise. Those viewing this that aren't here, feel free to make noise wherever you are. All right? And when I say go, I want you to do what you're doing and go. Keep writing on 1 + 1. Okay, and stop. 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 Okay, so Denise, that last time when I said go, what did you do?
I had a hard time concentrating, Miles.
Okay, but what did you write on the paper? You wrote your name. What did I tell you to do the last time?
I can't remember. I got so confused.
Does anybody know what I told Denise to do? No? Why not? Couldn't hear. It's too distracting. As I sat in that classroom, looking at the teacher, the fluorescent lights above me were flickering, grabbing my attention, going, hello! The girl beside me with way too much perfume on, grabbing my attention, going, hello! The kids walking up and down the hallway by the door, grabbing my attention, going, hello! The kid tapping his pencil, grabbing my attention, going, hello! The pens and pencils I used to write with hurt my hand. To just simply hold a pen hurts my hand all the way from my fingers up to my elbow. I would try to write faster so I didn't have to hold it as long because it's painful. Teachers saw that my writing was messy and sloppy, so they tried to give me these little rubber things to write with. They tried to give me different pens and pencils. Nothing seemed to work. Teacher would look at me and say, Miles, what's the answer to the question? I don't know. Well, why don't you know? I'm not too sure. What do you think the teacher thought when I couldn't answer the question and I'm sitting in the chair like this? Not paying attention. What do you think the teacher thought when I was constantly late for class, constantly late getting to school? I started getting labeled. Kid that didn't care. Kid that wasn't trying. Kid that wasn't paying attention. It became difficult for me because I didn't fit in. I didn't understand why not. I just knew I didn't. I thought there's got to be something to change. There's got to be something to give. Maybe if I talked to my biological mother, she might be able to give me some answer. So as I'd sit in my bedroom late at night, wondering why I didn't fit in, why I couldn't do the same schoolwork, I wrote this poem. The first part's called A Son's Plea. Mommy, keep me home today. Mommy, I don't want to go out and play. I'm not like the rest out there. I don't fit in. It's not fair. I may not be able to read or write. I may not be able to tell the difference between day and night. I laugh, I cry, I have hopes and dreams. But because I'm a little bit slower, nobody cares, or at least that's how it seems. Shelter me from this cruel world and hold me tight. Mommy, keep me safe and tell me I'll be all right. A mother's reply. My angel, I can't keep you sheltered from all the pain out there. It's like a horrible illness that floats through the air. I love you, my angel, so I must let you go. I love you, my angel, so I must let you grow. You very well may stumble along the way, and you'll find out that's not always okay. My angel, I once made a mistake when you were but a baby inside of me, but I promise you I'll never make a mistake like that again, because I want you to be all you can be. I smile when I see you laugh. I cry when I see you sad. I thank God every day for you. My angel, you're the best I've ever had. Every angel has to work hard to get their wings. Every angel has to do very special and meaningful things. Your heart and determination are what helps replace the tears with a smile on my face. My angel, your wings will be the ones to raise this world to a better place. I finally continued on through school, got to grade 11, and got partway through. Eventually was asked to leave school because I couldn't pay for the school books. This was because I wasn't living at home. At that time in my life, I got into drugs and alcohol for many different reasons. When I drank, it stopped the bubbles. They were calm. My body, for the first time, was relaxed and calm when I drank. If I showed up with drugs or alcohol, I had friends. For the first time, I was accepted. For the first time, I fit in. People liked me. They didn't care that I couldn't read or I couldn't write or that I would act silly and goofy. Hey, do you have some beer? Let's hang out, buddy. But when I didn't, I started to find out that they didn't want to be my friends. Addictions took over. It got out of hand, and I started to lose many things. I lost a relationship with my adoptive family because I chose to live that lifestyle. I had to leave home. I became homeless. I couldn't do school anymore because I couldn't pay for the school fees. I was just trying to fit in. FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, is also known as invisible disability. We've heard this word before today, invisible disability. It was hard for the people that I was around, the teachers, the students, my family, to see this disability. Because for me, there's nothing sticking out saying, yes, I need extra support or extra help. But what was even harder was when I looked in the mirror, there was nothing sticking out saying, it's okay that you learn different. It's okay that things are harder for you. It didn't make sense, and I didn't understand why or what was going on. I went into the work field thinking I'm done with school, those problems are behind me. Not so much. Students became co-workers, teachers were now supervisors, and principals became managers. The same problems that I had in school now carried over into work. Those same problems, those same struggles, and those same misunderstandings for me and those around me carried on into the work field. I still had the bubbles, I still had the sensory issues, and I still struggled with getting to work on time. I would lose job after job. My resume would be amazing, the 16 pages of having this job and having that job and having that job, except for the fact that the job only lasted 2 days, a week, maybe 2 weeks if I was lucky. I had a few different jobs. One of them was working at a Little Caesars pizza joint. I went there and they taught me how to make the pizza. You take the dough out of the freezer, you thaw it out, you spin it around in the air, drops on the ground, you pick it up, dust it off, put the toppings on, put it in the oven, cook it up, put it in the box, send it to the front to be delivered. I could do that. Come in the next day, do the same thing. At the end of my shift, sweep up the kitchen, and I got to take over leftover food home with me. So I had some food, I was getting paid, work was going good. Until the day I was asked to go work at the front and answer the phone. Now, I had to remember people's names, addresses, phone numbers, toppings, side orders, drinks. Just like in school, that information was all going in my head, but I didn't know how to write it out properly. So I was messing up the phone deliveries. Didn't take long for my boss to get upset at me. Why do you keep messing this up? Why can't you do this? Learned at a very young age, I'm stupid, but I'm not going to say that to anybody. So I'll take the label, I'll take the mask of I'm lazy, I don't care, it's not that important to me, I'm just a punk teenager. Yeah, I'll take those masks instead. Because I don't want to stand up and go, it's because I'm stupid, it's because I'm dumb. Or even if I understood, who's going to stand up and go, Because my mom drank alcohol during her pregnancy with me, I have what's called fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which causes me to have problems with time management as well as sensory issues. So that light in your kitchen is looking at me going, hello. Yeah, no, I'm not going to say that. It's a lot easier to go, I don't know, just messed up the order. So again, I lost my job. Looking back, there was success and failure in that job. Somebody had to make the pizzas, so why couldn't have I stayed back in the kitchen and made the pizzas? This is something very important that we have to remember in employment. Just because you move up in the job, we think, oh, that means that they're going to feel better about themselves. Change our view of success. We need to change our view of success and look what success is for them. Success for me was making those pizzas. Maybe I would have got $2 more for doing a different job there, but I wasn't successful. We need to stay with what's successful. I went on from there to work at another job, and that was working at a leisure center. I was working with kids. This was something I absolutely loved. I grew up in a home where we had 11 children in our family. 9 of us adopted, and all 9 of us had disabilities. Myotonic dystrophy, Down syndrome, there's 4 of us with FASD, all sorts of disabilities. But we focused on the ability. We focused on love as a family. We focused on the things we could do. Now, I still wasn't really hanging around with my family because of my issues with my addictions at the time, but I had those core values. I was always a good person. I always had a good heart. Just was a little bit lost at that time. To work with kids was something that I was good at. Came naturally for me. So this was good. Sports. Sports were amazing for me because I got to let those bubbles out. Those bubbles that make me want to move, I got to do that when I jumped, when I ran. Those bubbles got to be released. So coaching kids' sports was great for me. I did that. Worked at a daycare. Did birthday parties on the weekend. Was having really good success. Still struggling to get there on time, but was having some success. So this felt good. I went from there one day talking with a lady that I was working with and was told about this conference on FASD, and she asked me to come speak at it. And I said, okay, sure. Didn't really understand FASD or what it meant, but I thought, okay, I'll just go talk. So I had everything down that I wanted to say, and I stood up, and there was about 100 people. I started reading off the piece of paper. You know, hi, my name's Miles, blah, 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 blah. I got a little bit of way through. I realized, I know my story. So I just started talking from my heart. I finished that presentation, and I was like, that's it. I don't know what it is exactly, but there's something here. I had this great feeling inside of me. It felt good. I went from there to start working with young adults with FASD, being an FASD mentor, sharing the experiences that I've been through, and sharing some of the things that I put in place to be successful. I didn't really realize it at the time, but I had things in place. 2 big things were routine and repetition. Just like when I worked at the pizza joint, that repetition. Just like in school, I would know how to do the work once I did the math question over and over and over. So routine and repetition, these were things that I implemented into doing this job. I would have all the stuff I had to do highlighted on sticky notes, in my day timer, all different places around the house so I could see it and had all these reminders. This was helping me be successful. I shared these things with the young adults that I was working with. I ended up working at that job full-time, being an FASD mentor. That program went into a few different agencies, and so I ended up having different supervisors. There's a lot of different experiences. Some good, some not so good. I was never told what you can and you can't do. I would have young individuals, parents dropping them off at my house at 11:30 at night because they're high on crack or cocaine. I didn't know that. No, it's not right for you to take them in your house. I just wanted to help them. So I fed them, gave them a place to sleep, then took them back to work the next day. The supervisor didn't tell me it was wrong. I let them know what I was doing. They're like, oh, that's good. Didn't realize that wasn't right. Ended up moving into another agency, doing a similar program. One day, the supervisor called me in and said, why do you not have your timesheet done? I said, I don't remember how to do it. She goes, okay, I'll sit down, let's do it. So I did the timesheet. Fast forward a couple more weeks. Miles, come in my office. Okay, shut the door. So I shut the door. She looks at me and says, and I will clean up the language here, why the heck weren't you at work yesterday? And I said, I had a personal problem come up, and so I took a personal day. Well, I don't give a darn, because if I have to drive through the snow, you can get your butt here. Okay, I'll try to get here. Felt very bullied, intimidated, scared. That same day, I'm supposed to do my timesheet. Something that I did 30 days ago, I'm trying to remember how to do again. I couldn't remember how to do it. She would look at me and say, I've seen you do it. You did it before, you can do it now. It was very difficult for me because I thought, you're right, I did do it before. Why can't I remember how to do it now? Again, that information was all jumbled up in my head. I had to remember what time I was at work. I had to remember the case notes that I did, the client that I saw, the time I spent with the client, on what day. There was so much information, and I couldn't remember how to do it. I was scared and intimidated to go to ask for help, so I didn't. You don't do your timesheet, what happens? You don't get paid. You don't get paid, how do you pay rent? It was a domino effect. I went from there to another agency. Things were going good there, till one day I got called in and said, we lost our funding as of today. Everybody's out of a job. I didn't know what I was going to do. What about the poor individuals that I work with? What about my poor coworkers? It took me about 4 or 5 days to sit there and go, oh my goodness, what about me? I can't just go over there and get a job. It's not that easy. I didn't know what I was going to do. Didn't know where to go. You know, I was very lucky and very fortunate to get into the field the way I did. I didn't know what I was going to do. Ended up going back to another agency. There was a new supervisor. Called her up after a couple months of working, supposed to meet to do our timesheet. I'm on the bus. I say, I'm so sorry, I'm late. I know I'm late and I really apologize. I'm going to be there right away. She said to me, don't worry about it. She goes, I booked off the whole afternoon. And when you get here, we'll have some pizza. So we'll sit down and do your timesheet. I was like, oh, okay. I got there. We sat down. I pulled out my day timer. She pulled out her day timer. Oh, so you were with Tom that day. I have that written down. From 3 to 4, you're with Tom. And I was like, oh yeah, I just had the hours that I worked. She goes, okay, well, it's okay because I've already written it down here. She would work with me. She knew that it wasn't going to be a quick little thing, so she booked the afternoon off so that we could work together. She knew that part of my disability was I don't feel the sensation to eat. I can go 2 or 3 days without eating. So she would have pizza there. I would eat. I would get the paperwork done. It'd be handed in. It was success. Her taking those few extra hours to just sit and go, okay, I'm here, don't worry about it, made a huge, huge difference. Same results. Timesheet was done, got paid, rent was paid. Just that little switch of caring a little bit more and going, how can I support this person? Not because they have a disability, because I'm going to support them, because that's what I do. just like I support everyone else I work with. What kind of support does it look like for them? Maybe it's a little bit different. Okay, we'll do it this way. It was a success. I continued on working. That supervisor unfortunately left to go pursue another career. She spoke with our manager and said, I would be more than happy to train the next person coming in to be the supervisor. Manager said, no, it's okay. I already have an idea of who I want to come work. I was worried. I'm like, oh my goodness, this lady did so much and was so supportive and understanding. When I worked with those individuals and I shared what I'd been through and we connected, and they looked at me and thought, oh, you get it. You have FASD too, and you think it's okay and you can live successfully with it. That makes me feel good. To see them succeeding helped me succeed and helped me feel good. Work was going really well, and now there was going to be a change. That's scary. That's difficult. Didn't have a lot of notice. Didn't know what was going to happen. This new lady came in, went back to the same issues. You have to be here from this time to this time. There were some days that I was 10, 15 minutes late, and I'd get in trouble. There were some days that I was told, you were supposed to work 27 days this month, and you worked 29. We can't afford to pay you for the 2 extra days, so stop working those days. I went in and had a meeting once and said, can I go from part-time to full-time if I can show you in 3 months that I can do this, 3 months consecutively of being on time and doing the work I need to. 2.5 months in, there was always something wrong. Either I was late and didn't get enough hours, or I got too many hours. I didn't understand this. Again, timesheet was another problem. Well, I saw you do it. I know you can do it. I've been very blessed to have the ability to speak and be a motivational speaker. People started looking at me and going, oh, that's that FASD guy, look at him. Like, he's great, he's amazing, that's awesome. I felt great, I felt amazing. I was like, that FASD guy? I don't know. My employers would look at me and go, okay, you know what, I saw you speak in front of 500 people, and you're telling me you can't do a fax sheet? You're telling me you can't do your time sheet? Oh, I guess I can and I should be able to because I can speak to 500 people? It didn't make sense to me, but they thought it did. I would go out and present about this agency and say, they help individuals with disabilities. I work there myself. It's a great agency. If you have any young adults you think would fit with these programs, please make the referrals. After doing an hour presentation over lunch, I'd go back to that agency and I'd give them the receipt for $3.25 for the 2 pops I had during the lunch meeting. We're not reimbursing you. We don't have the budget. What? I went and promoted for you. And you know what? We're tired of you being late. I have a disability. I needed support and help. But this agency that was about disabilities wasn't even giving their own employee the support and help that I was going out there and saying that they offered. It was very difficult. It was very hard for me. When I left that agency, I remember the day I left. I was sitting in my desk, and I got up and I went and said goodbye to a couple people. I'd been in that agency for a number of years. No farewell lunch, no card, no nothing. Did a lot of work, put a lot of time and effort and my heart into it. When I was in my mid-20s, I started to hear about what FASD was, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. I started to hear statistics about what was going to happen with people with FASD and this disability, and how, a percentage of them would end up in jail, wouldn't be able to live independently, wouldn't be able to maintain a job, wouldn't be able to finish school, would have problems with, and end up in jail. Going through that checklist, I could check each and every one of those off because I experienced them all. I thought, this is what my life is? This is where it's going? It didn't make sense. I still had those, bubble troubles and the sensory issues and the problems with time. But I started to understand about FASD from other people. Started to understand that FASD is a full body diagnosis. It doesn't just affect your brain. It affects your bones, your muscles. Those bubbles in my body, that bubble trouble, it made sense. It wasn't my fault. It was something I couldn't control. Those sensory issues, it wasn't my fault. It was something I couldn't control. You think of a young child in Walmart and somebody's on the speaker and it starts screeching. That young child covers their ears and screams and runs down the aisle going, ah! We think, oh, that's cute. You see a 22-year-old man cover his ears and run down the aisle going, ah! We look at him, what's wrong with that guy? Grow up. What are you doing? You're an adult. Act your age. Sensory overload is when something happens and it builds up in your body and you can't handle it. People usually, we feel that, when you're getting upset about something, you feel it building and building. And it's like, okay, I need to step away from the situation, or I need to stop whatever that is, or, the nails on the chalkboard kind of sound. You stop that sound so it's not getting to you so much. When you have sensory overload and you can't control that and it happens in 2.1 seconds, that buildup, there's a release that is bigger than you and your body reacts. And so you go, so you scream, so you can't handle it. When you have that sensory overload, every little thing catches your attention. The person talking, person drinking their water, the person cutting vegetables in the kitchen for the last 3 hours. Every little thing. And what heightens that is when your brain doesn't rest. My brain would constantly be going. When I'd sleep at night, it didn't stop. It was still going, still thinking. My body was still moving. Those bubbles did not stop. I finally realized this, and I ended up getting some medication to help me sleep. I was about 30 when I did this. I cannot tell you what it felt like for the first time in 30 years to wake up and go, I just slept. This is what everybody else around me feels every day. How was I supposed to go to school at 8 in the morning when my brain didn't stop, when my body didn't rest? We have our cell phones. We go home at night and we charge them in. We charge that battery so that when we get up in the morning, cell phone's good to go. My brain didn't have the time to sleep, the opportunity to sleep, rest, and recharge. So my battery was always low. How am I supposed to start thinking? How am I supposed to do this? There was things I didn't understand. I was supposed to be at work at 9 o'clock. Okay, I get that. I know what 9 o'clock is. I can tell time. That works. But nobody ever called me and said, so that means you need to leave your house at 8:32. They tell you what time to be there, but don't ask if you know what time you need to leave. What happens if I miss that bus? What do I do? What happens then? What happens now? Start panicking. There's all these things going on Once I realized what was happening for me and that I was having sensory overload, having bubble trouble, I started realizing, okay, there's stuff I can do though. What can I do? I got medication to sleep, so I can get up in the morning. Do I get up at 8 in the morning? Usually no. I get up a little bit later, but that's what works for me. When I have sensory buildup or sensory overload, I move away. When I was making requests for what I needed for this presentation, one of the things I asked for was a handheld mic instead of the podium or a clip-on mic. These things, such as a handheld mic or a fidget ring, help me control the bubbles. Those were things I needed in the classroom. Those are things I needed at the job so that I could concentrate. This isn't distracting anybody, but for me, it's helping me concentrate. It's helping me focus. These were things I started to understand. These were things that I started to get. I was very lucky to have a good understanding of what my body was acting like. It started to make sense, and I was okay with having this. It wasn't a disability that, oh my goodness, your mom drank when she was pregnant with you. That's a negative thing. That means you're a negative thing. Unfortunately, I get that reaction from people. When I say I have FASD, I've had people literally back up. What, are you going to catch it? Really? Oh, here it comes. I'm going to get you. You're going to get it. No. I understood what this meant. But I also understood that I wanted to show the ability that I had, the strengths that I had. I wanted to change FASD. Not to be this negative, scary, bad thing. I want to embrace it. Say it's part of me. It's not who I am. I'm not the FASD guy. It's what I have, and that's okay. So I changed the acronym. Instead of FASD standing for fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, I changed it to F for faith. I had faith in myself, faith in my own self-worth. I was worthy. I was good enough. Faith that someone out there would care. And as things went on over the years, people came into my life. A friend named Liz came in and taught me about FASD, the full body diagnosis, helped me understand and make it make sense for me, helped me have self-worth and accept myself. I surrounded myself with good friends that truly cared about me and weren't using me. This was good. I had faith that they were my friends now. Surrounded myself with more people that gave me different opportunities. People that showed me if you ask for some support, they will be there and they will help you. Sometimes I still have to go, hey, I still have a disability. I know I look really good, but I still need supports. And they turn around and go, yeah, nope, we're on it for you. We're there to help you. People that have gone to what seems above and beyond their job and done things that sometimes seem like the littlest things, but have made the biggest differences. People like Denise, who a month ago, I had 3 different people I needed to meet about 3 different conferences. Set the meeting up at one office to meet with 2 people. We'll walk down the street, we'll meet with the other person. All the meetings are done, taken care of. Okay, well, what about the contracts? What about the travel? What about the accommodations? Take care of it. We'll email you. You just let us know what you need. Done. Didn't take days to do the work. Just that little bit of time to do this, a little bit of time to make the phone call. Those things. To be a friend and have faith in what I do and know if we give him the support, he's going to do good. We have that faith in him. that meant a lot to me. It means a lot to me. A for ability. Ability to do things. What can this guy do? When I got a diagnosis years ago when I was in my mid-20s, I was told, at the end of it, I read, Miles has a grade 6 math level and would be good at carrying out groceries. I thought that was my future. I thought, really? I'm going to carry out groceries? Can I do more than that? That's all I am? For me, I felt like I could do more than that. I felt that I had more ability. I stand up here today in front of you, a motivational speaker, a co-author. I've been in the media. I have a DVD documentary. I facilitate groups. I'm on many different boards and committees. And also been given the title of, what was it again, sorry? FASD consultant. Felt amazing. I realized that I had these abilities inside of me. I was going to all these different conferences and hearing about the research that's been done on FASD and all these doctors and psychologists and therapists, all these people that were professionals in the field. Finally realized one day, you know what? With all the ability that I have, I'm the professional. These individuals such as myself that live with this disability every single day, we are the professionals. You can go to school for 5-6 years. I've been to school for 35 years, every day of my life. Do I know what it feels like? Do I know what the supports are that I need? Do I know the strategies and techniques? Some of them yes, some of them no. Sit with me. Talk with me. We are the professionals because we have those abilities inside of us. I sat at that agency thinking, you know, I've done a lot of work here as a mentor, but I'm not being appreciated for the work I'm doing. I have the ability to do many things. Went in and talked to my supervisor and my manager, and I said, I'm giving my 30-day notice. And they looked at me and said, why? I said, I'm going to change the world. Didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have any bookings, nothing. Gave my 30 days notice. Got a booking, got another booking. I've been doing that now for over a year, doing my own work and going out and doing training and motivational speaking because I had the abilities. I trusted myself with those abilities. S for strength. Some of the strengths I have is that I can speak and give a different insight on what it's like to live with FASD. Give a different insight on what it's like to live with a disability. Give the insight of what it's like to have those struggles. But that strength comes into play when I look and go, you know what? Yeah, I fell down a lot. Had a lot of times where things were hard and tough. I was homeless. I was addicted to drugs and alcohol. I unfortunately lost both of my biological parents. They passed away. Couldn't keep a job. Wasn't able to finish school. I fell down, I fell down, I fell down. But I got up every single time. And I stand here in front of you, And that proves I'm not down there, I'm standing. So I've got up at least one more time than when I've fallen because I have that strength to keep going forward. I have that strength inside of me to believe that there was something more out there, that I could do something, that strength to keep moving forward, to change the world. D for determination. Determination that nothing was going to stop me. That no matter what people said about me, no matter what people said about FASD, no matter what people said about people with disabilities, I was determined to put a positive face on FASD. When I do my presentations about FASD, I talk about many different things. If I were to say, stand up if you could relate to any of these things, I'm sure we'd have most of the room standing when I talk about struggles with time management, struggles with money management, fitting in, self-worth, addictions, violence, abuse. That's not just FASD. Those are things we all experience, something. It's that determination to continue forward. Every day in our life, we have an opportunity to be a victim or be responsible. You can sit at the table and you can look at your friend and go, oh, that traffic was horrible, I can't believe it. You know, and I had to slam on my brakes and I spilt my coffee and what a horrible morning. And then you can go to your next friend and let them know how horrible your morning was. You know, and then you call up your brother or your sister and you let them know how horrible your morning was. Or you can come here and go, I had a horrible trip getting here, but at least I'm here. It's your choice to be a victim or responsible. I can choose to be a victim and say, you know what? My mom drank and now I struggle and now I have things that I can't do. Or I can be responsible and go, my mom drank because she got involved with addiction issues. My mom drank because she got neglected and abused. And I look at that and I go, it's the exact same reasons I drank. Would I change what I've been through? Never. Never. To go from where I was to where I am today is me embracing it and being responsible and saying, yeah, that's the path I chose. And it's made me who I am. I choose to be responsible, not a victim, responsible. Like I said, it was interesting to come to this conference because I was really concerned on how I'm going to talk about, you know, being in the workplace and technology and stuff like that. I hope that you've learned that routine, repetition, changing our view of success, those are things that you implement in the work field. You know, this is an amazing conference because we're talking about making sure we see that it's success we're going for. Do we implement more things in the office? Do we make sure there's a ramp outside? Do we find a job where they fit instead of going, no, they just don't fit here? That's what this conference is about. It's saying, yeah, there's a place for everybody. Can all do this. Maybe Jimmy works 1 day a week, but Jimmy can still look at his mom and dad and go, I work. Yeah, you do, Jimmy. Good. Good on you. I don't work 9 to 5. It doesn't work for me. Never has and it never will. I do these public speaking engagements. I sit on these boards. I do mentoring. I do all these odd jobs. Equals full-time work for me. I'm also on government assistance. That was hard. Felt like, oh, I don't need it. I can do better without it. No. You know, it's there to help me and support me. Gives me the opportunity to be able to do these different things and be successful. Sometimes it's hard because I wonder what I'm going to do next or what's going to happen next, but that's also exciting because those doors are open. Those opportunities are out there. You know, his talk isn't about FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, but I do thank you for the opportunity to come present to you. And I hope maybe you all walk away with a little FASD, faith, ability, strength, and determination. Thank you.
We've got about 5 minutes. Did you take it?
We've got about 5 minutes, and so Miles has agreed to take questions. Does anyone have a question in the hall or on the webcast? I know there's a question out there.
How old are you, Miles? I am 35. And single. and single.
Another question. Here we are.
I think about my first experience in learning about fetal alcohol syndrome, and it was like a 2020 magazine show or something like that. And it really depicted a really poor picture of somebody with this. And I'm just wondering if that, and that was a good 25, 30 years ago for me. How do you feel about the media, and if things are changing, or if there's a lot of advocacy to shine a bit of light and positive?
I feel that there's been a lot of work done, and we are seeing a lot more positive things, but unfortunately, media tends to focus on negative things. You know, we don't read the newspaper, and on the front page is, you know, this beautiful baby boy was born. It's this horrific car accident that happened or something like that. And unfortunately, there is a lot of negativity still in FASD. We were just talking today about a news release that happened last week where I spent over an hour sharing about the successes I had in FASD and in my life. And unfortunately, they focused on some of the negative things that I went through at an early age. The view on FASD is still negative out there, you know, and it's about giving those changes and making those changes, you know, because individuals such as myself, we just hear the negative things. We don't a lot of times hear about the positive things and the success stories, and those are things that we need to focus on.
Thank you. This is from the webcast. What do you think you'll do if the funding is cut?
I don't know. That is something that's very difficult for me because, you know, when I lost that job, I didn't know what I was going to do. I look at it and I think, do I not deserve to have a life where I can feel supported? Do I not deserve to fall in love and get married and have a family and be able to support them? Yeah, I do. But because I have a disability, that's another fight I have to go through. Is that fair? No, it is not fair. Those supports need to be there. It's not just about, oh, let's just dish the money out. It's let's get that support out there. And it does come down to financial support for those success. And so I will be there fighting, that's for sure. I will be there helping and fighting to make sure that the funding is there.
Thank you. There was a question down here.
It's actually not a question, but I really wanted to thank you, Miles, for bringing that individual perspective and opening our eyes to have a glimpse of what it's like to be someone like you who live with FASD. So I sincerely thank you for sharing that perspective. I think it is important for all of us who work in the field, who have families or friends who live with FASD or other disabilities. So I really sincerely wanted to thank you for that. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. I would normally let that be the last question because it's such a neat last comment, but I thought you might want to answer this one.
Okay.
Do you do talks in small communities?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Doesn't matter about the crowd, how big or how small. It's about helping people. If you help one person, that's still changing a life, and that's what it matters. So.
And is contact information on the screen?
Contact information is on the screen there, yeah.
So whoever's asked the question from the webcast, then please take the information down from the screen and you can contact Miles directly. Thank you. Thank you very much, Miles. I'd like to give you a very small token of our appreciation.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much. It's time to move to break now. And so if you will take the 20 minutes that we have, make sure you see the trade show. Please give us ideas and thoughts that are coming through your head as you listen to the speakers. We've had some people send in answers to previous questions, so I'm going to give a couple of those after the break. And so please, make sure you reconnect. Thanks. See you in 20 minutes.
Oh, I like the AMRAMP system very much.
My AMRAMP system is great.
We had a wooden ramp that a friend of ours installed, and it was a good job, but every time it rained or snowed, it turned into a ski slope.
But we could get splinters on.
Don't have to worry about snow collection on the ramps or anything else. Everything melts right through the grades.
Completely independent is what I like, that you guys set me up with.
I looked at wooden ramps and the flat metal ones that fold up that would not be permanent, and they just didn't seem sturdy enough for what I need because I'm in and out all the time.
No movement at all, just felt very safe all in all.
And now we have this one, and it is much better. The snow falls right through, the rain and the ice don't slick it up.
Before I couldn't even go outside without somebody helping me get out. But with you guys now I can go wherever I want.
They're interchangeable, so I can take them with me. It's not a set structure, so if I decide to move from where I am and I can use my ramp somewhere else, they're going with me.
And the way you guys set it up, you set it up perfect so that, it's easy to get up, get down, easy to get out. I mean, everything about it is just great.
And just very, very satisfied altogether.
I did a lot of homework before I decided to go with American ramps.
We had it removed for a better ramp, this one.
It's a great system.
So it was a good choice, the best choice.
Employability's Career and Employment Center. It's an innovative program that's been in the agency for approximately 18 months, close to 2 years. And it's an opportunity for anyone who happens to have a medical condition, a barrier to employment, or a disability to come on in, be able to see and view some of the resources that we happen to have. We have Alberta Works publications, we happen to have information on job search, we happen to have job leads for our employers. We also can look at doing some career planning. We happen to have just a wealth of information and resources available, and they do not need an appointment. Just come on through the door. We welcome them to be here and, you know, see the resources, meet with an employment coach, and set a plan of action. All the services at Employabilities are at no cost. Some of our programs happen to have a tuition fee to them, but we work with Student Aid Alberta in order to be able to find a grant for that. Here at Employabilities, we have a variety of assistive technologies. We have everything from adjustable tables that can be raised and lowered for people who are using wheelchairs or mobility, scooters for mobility. We happen to have the print magnifier for individuals who happen to have visual impairments. We happen to have TTY accessibility for individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing. We happen to have the Interpretype system, which is a system that people can communicate with each other very quickly. It's portable, it's really accessible and easy for individuals to use quite quickly. We happen to have single-handed keyboards, big keys keyboards for people with visual impairments. We have a variety of software for individuals with learning disabilities. There's just a vast array of the types of technologies we have available, and it's all done more on an individual basis rather than, you know, just having them available for groups. But individuals come on in and we'll find the technology that happens to suit them. Here at the Career and Employment Center, we're based in Edmonton, and it's Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. But we also have locations up in Cold Lake, Bonnyville, Laclabish, St. Paul, Vegreville, Fort Saskatchewan. Those are home-based offices, and we work with Alberta Works quite closely to be able to provide the services for individuals there. You can find us in a number of ways. We do happen to have our website, which is www.employabilities.ab.ca. We can also we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. There's ways of individuals to be able to connect with us.
The goal of disability-related employment supports, DRES, is actually to increase the awareness of Albertans for persons with disabilities to get hired in the workplace by helping Albertans and employers be able to accommodate individuals in their workplace and increase employment retention. I'm here to talk about Alberta Works and disability-related employment supports. Disability-related employment supports are a tool and a service that is provided within Alberta Works that provides supports and services to Albertans with disabilities. Some of the supports and services that we provide are things like tutors for individuals accessing different training programs. We may provide funding for computer software, for voice to text speech, for instance. Another tool might be even a vehicle accommodation so an individual can get to and from work. And something more recently that we have noticed that's really helping individuals retain employment is job coaching services and assessment. And that is something that falls within Alberta Works. And individuals wanting to access any of these programs or learn more about it can go onto our website, can go onto the ALIS website, alis.gov.ab.ca, or they can pop into one of our Career Alberta Works centers. And we have 4 Alberta Work Centres in the Edmonton area, and they're all over the province. Okay, we've got some great short videos on the Ellis website that feature different topics of career planning. Everything from a person job searching, accessing our career Alberta Work Centres, and as well things about job loss, diversity, how does a person with a disability access employment, how do employers help retain employees. It's quite diverse, the number of videos we have and the number of publications we have also at our sites and online. Information about DRES is available on the Government of Alberta website. It's available at the Ellis website, and you'll also find it in information on our publications. A lot of different areas will focus back to disability-related employment supports.
I think the most important thing about Aroga Technologies is that a lot of people with disabilities, when they look at employment, participation in the community, education, different things like that, they run into a lot of barriers, a lot of obstacles, and you know, your first reaction is this is going to be insurmountable. And I think technology plays a great role in the fact that it reduces those barriers, it opens up doors, it opens up opportunities for people to participate, whether that be in their daily living activities, whether that be in an educational pursuit, and ultimately, you know, the end goal being employment. Aroga sells technology that's related to individuals with disabilities. It's called assistive technology, and it's there to assist the individual with overcoming some of those barriers that are presented. So when people think about disability, different things come to mind. Aroga deals with all disability groups. That might be somebody with a physical disability, that might be somebody with a hearing impairment, that might be somebody who's lost vision, is totally blind, has a learning disability, or has a communication disability that doesn't allow them to communicate properly. So we have technology for all of those different types of groups. So for example, when we look at low vision technology, we like to use a lot of CCTVs, which are magnification devices. When we deal with people that have communication disabilities, we use augmentative communication devices that allow people to generate speech. When we deal with individuals with learning disabilities, participating in education, there are products out there that will help you read material, write better, understand better, plan and organize yourself better. So there's a product for everybody. Connecting with Aroga happens in a lot of different ways. A lot of our seniors connect with us directly to look for low vision equipment, but a lot of individuals connect with Aroga through a government support, through their educational service providers, through an assessment facility within the community. So coming into contact with Aroga can come in a lot of different ways. We do have a great website. It's www.aroga.com. If you go there, we have over 1,000 catalog items. You'll be able to get a good introduction of what types of technologies are available for different disability groups. And of course, contacting us directly is a telephone call or an email away, and we can be of assistance to identify what technology is going to be right for what you're trying to accomplish.
Do you have questions about planning your career? Need advice on education options? Looking for resume help? The Career Information Hotline is your place for expert answers to all these questions and much more. It's a free service where career advisors can be contacted online or by phone for help on a variety of career, education, and employment topics. For example, if you need advice on career planning, career advisors can guide you towards determining your interests and how to get the planning process started. You'll learn about various occupations and be directed to information about working conditions, skills and training requirements, and even salary ranges. If you want to know more about your education options, career advisors can help you with information on full or part-time post-secondary education and apprenticeship. They can also let you know about funding options like scholarships, loans, and employment insurance. When it comes to job search skills, the hotline is a good source for tips on writing a resume, putting together cover letters and references, as well as researching and preparing for interviews. To ask a question online, use the e-question submission page. Simply fill out the online form with your contact information and question. Click on Submit, and you're done. It's that easy. A career advisor will review your question and send you an expert answer within 3 business days. If you'd like to speak with a career advisor, you can also phone the Career Information Hotline toll-free at 1-800-661-3753 or locally in Edmonton at 780-422-4266. Ever wanted to have your resume professionally reviewed? Take advantage of the hotline's e-resume review service. It's a free service for Albertans and those looking to work in Alberta. Fill out a quick and easy form, attach your resume, click Submit, and your resume will be reviewed by an expert. Career advisors will respond within 3 to 5 business days and provide you with professional feedback on your resume. As you can see, Alice's Career Information Hotline is a powerful resource. Career advisors are just a click or phone call away from offering you help with every step of your career planning, educational, and employment process. Why not contact them today?
If you've entered the world of work, you'll find the Workplace Resources section on ALICE to be informative and useful. Whether you're wondering about rights as a worker or how to manage workplace issues, you'll find links, tips, and publications here. Pages include Rights and Responsibilities, Enhancing the Workforce, and Managing Work Relationships. Every worker has both rights and responsibilities on the job. Many of the rules that must be followed in Alberta, such as minimum wage or the length of a workday, are set out in legislation. The Rights and Responsibilities section directs you to resources on labor laws and human rights, and provides other practical directions such as how to apply for employment insurance online. Did you know that you can refuse to do dangerous work? This section also links you to information about the laws, programs, and services that keep your workplace safe. Through the Enhancing the Workforce page, you can learn about work search and which jobs are in demand. You can access information on what wages are being paid using the labor market information links, strategies for staff development, and tips on how to balance life and work. The Managing Work Relationships section is all about human resources. In other words, how to make the most of your work life. Useful links cover topics like skills development, disability on the job, and how to succeed at work by being a valued employee. Succeeding at work also means nurturing your life outside the workplace. You can find tips on achieving a healthy work-life balance in the Managing Work Relationships section as well. One thing is certain, our workplaces are always evolving. Whether you're on your first day of the job or in your 10th year as senior manager, you'll benefit from the comprehensive links and publications in the Workplace Resources section of ALICE.
The other pieces of Sean's bio are in your package. Help me welcome Sean to the stage. There. Thank you, thank you.
Hi. Is this working? Can people hear me?
Yep.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. It's absolutely gorgeous outside, so you people are very committed to this cause. Before I start talking, I guess I'd just like to say a little bit about the agency that I work for and the services that we provide, to sort of give you some perspective on where this information comes from. So the employment program at Calgary Alternative Support Services is simply Calgary Alternative Employment Services. And we've been around since 1998. Since that time, we've had contracts with PDD, with INAC, with AISH, with Service Canada's Opportunities Fund. So we've had a great opportunity to be involved in a variety of different funding initiatives, probably about close to 20 separate projects over the last 15 years, not counting our PDD services. And most of those have been with people with disabilities, also some contracts serving First Nations communities, most recently an urban Aboriginal initiative in Calgary, but we've also partnered with First Nations communities and Community Futures Treaty 7 in the past to help on-nation career centers do some better work. So that's sort of where my experience comes from. Let's see if I can make this work. All right, just to sort of get everyone on the same page, I'm really sorry if some of this information is redundant. I know there's a lot of different people in the room with various experiences over the years, but just to get everyone on the same page about supported employment, it's something that started in the 80s to serve people with intellectual disabilities, and it kind of paralleled the community living movement. Supported employment is supposed to be using career development theory, trait and factor theory developed by Frank Parsons, kind of in combination with some of the best practices around disability services. So that's sort of just a very quick overview of where it came from. When we talk about supported employment, although you can have a lot of different models to effectively serve people, essentially there's three elements that we've seen over the years that are the most effective. We've read about this in the works of Michael Callahan, Del DeLeo, David Hagner, Denise Bissonnette. There's some great authors, great pioneers in this field. So when we look at what is supported employment, what is required, basically to engage in that career exploration and employment preparation phase, followed by an employment placement in a job that the person really wants and is capable of doing, followed by job retention services for people who need support. That's very quickly kind of what we're looking at. The service strategies and interventions that we tend to generally use to facilitate that: intake and assessment, career exploration, employment preparation, job search and placement, employer support and education, and follow-up and retention supports. All of these tend to be sort of the critical elements of supported employment services. I just want to make sure that as we move forward into an employment first agenda, that everyone kind of has a good knowledge of what is required. Assistive technology is great. It's something that we occasionally use with people that have mobility or sensory disabilities on top of their developmental disability or intellectual disability, but it's actually a very small part of what we do. Most of what we do is based in these kinds of interventions here. And just to kind of get people on the same page about employment first, I've had some conversations with funders, with PDD, with different representatives, and the Employment First initiative is not really a magic bullet. It's a philosophy that's intended to guide policy and best practice in supported employment, which basically says, and you can see this on their website at employmentfirst.net, I believe, basically says, let's believe in and support employment as the most appropriate vehicle for community participation. So it's basically a best practice. It's not necessarily a model. So what they're suggesting on the Employment First website, we use typical or customized employment techniques to secure membership in the workforce where employees with disabilities are included on the payroll, or are self-employed business owners. And I think that self-employment option is really critical. We've actually engaged in several supported entrepreneurship projects over the years, and it's a great opportunity to engage people in labor market participation who maybe weren't able to really excel in traditional workforce placement. And you heard some of that from Miles earlier, that, you know, it's not that it doesn't require support, but it affords a lot of accommodations that meet the person's needs. Assigned work tasks offer at least minimum or prevailing wages and benefits, and typical opportunities exist for integration and interactions with coworkers. All of this stuff we've been doing as employment programs in Alberta and in Canada for the last 15, 20 years. Again, the Employment First agenda is intended as best practice to guide policy and practice. When we look at kind of what is the employment inclusions report card like, Bruce spoke earlier about how we're doing in supported employment. It's very much still in development. The research and best practices are still not always utilized in service implementation and service design. The employment and disability stats have actually remained virtually unchanged in Canada and the US since the mid-90s, maybe like a 5 percentage point difference in what they've been over the last 20 years, which raises some questions. It certainly raises questions for me. There's also inconsistencies in the definition of employment. So in my world, employment, in the employment program that I oversee, employment means competitive employment that pays at least minimum wage in a real workplace with an integrated environment. All of the things that Employment First says, those are the things that I understand to be employment. But in my work, some of the work I do is around training supported employment professionals through ACDS, the Alberta Council of Disability Services. And what we encounter during that training quite a lot is that not everyone has the same definition of employment. So if you don't have those same definitions, it's going to be pretty hard to affect significant changes in the labor market participation stats for people. It's also important to know that supported employment can be a really effective tool to address labor market inclusion for all. We've seen that with First Nations people with disabilities, with people with medical disabilities, mobility disabilities, intellectual disabilities. Our program has, over the last 15 years, probably facilitated well over 300 jobs for people in that time. I'm not saying that every one of those jobs lasted and didn't need to be found again, but we facilitated a lot of jobs. And a lot of the jobs that we have facilitated, people still retain those jobs, you know, years later. So that's got a pretty significant return on investment. If you look at the average ACE check and people reducing their draw on that, I think there's an incredibly good financial argument for supported employment services. Sorry. So what are some of the barriers? Why aren't the stats getting better? What are we seeing? So I don't have a PhD in analyzing social policy or anything like that. These are some of the things that I've seen over the years, working with different funders, different organizations, talking to colleagues all around Canada. I've formerly was the president of the Canadian Association for Supported Employment and the Alberta Association for Supported Employment. So I've had great opportunity to meet lots of people from lots of different agencies around Canada and North America. And these are some of the things that are kind of coming to the forefront. So with regard to funding, I'm going to be generalist and divide funding into two categories, core funding and project funding. So the core funding sort of exists from province to province, from state to state around North America, and that's basically the PDD style funding that you don't have to compete for that funding necessarily. You don't have to submit proposals for that funding. It's sort of an ongoing relationship. And typically, people aren't paying really close attention to your outcomes. And although the work that we do through PDD is fantastic, and I love working with them as a funder because I know that money will be there next year to serve well, let's hope the money will be there next year, to serve people on an ongoing basis who need it. As much as that's fantastic, it doesn't really light a big fire under my butt to do a better job of it because I don't have to compete for it. I don't have to give them proposals. And I'm not suggesting to anyone here from PDD that I want to compete for those dollars. That's not what I'm saying. But it is it is a factor in what I would call service stagnation and people not being forced to sort of do a better job year after year in terms of generating greater outcomes for people. The work that we do with people with disabilities is not a concern. That work is really solid, and I think as a field, our connection with people, our relationships with people is really good, and I think Alberta's a leader in that regard. I think where maybe in general the field is falling behind is realizing that employers have a far more significant role than we're giving them credit for in this. In fact, it's impossible to generate an employment placement outcome without an employer. And they really are our client, and we need to focus on that a bit more. One of the problems that we see with project funding, which again, we've done 20 of these over the last 15 years, it's time limited. And that's kind of a problem when you're trying to serve people with barriers to employment and you're supposed to facilitate an entire career exploration process for a 20-year-old woman with FASD who's a single mom and has all kinds of barriers to employment. To facilitate that whole career exploration process and the pre-employment process and get her into a job and call that sustainable in the space of 12 months is quite frankly, it's not happening. It's not working like that. If we look at employment stats in general, 46% of new hires will fail in the first 18 months, but we stop measuring at 12 in a lot of these projects. And so I think what we need to maybe see is looking at exploring some sort of hybrid of these types of funding that will really help us create better outcomes in this regard. Our failure to recognize and serve the customer is almost prevalent, and I'm really not trying to badmouth any of the great service providers out there, and it's something that we've had to learn the hard way over the years as well at our program. The fact of the matter is, an employer, when they hire someone, they want, just like when you've hired someone, you want it to work. You want that hire to be solid. You want it to be something that pays off for you, and you want that person to essentially bring more profit than they cost. So we as service providers need to really do our work with career exploration and with communicating to the employer that they can expect some hiring confidence from us. We need to begin doing that better. Everyone knows that the economy has changed, that the work market has changed, the labor market. All of these things have changed over the years, but we haven't really changed a whole lot in how we do this. And I think we need to really be focusing a lot more on the customer service that the employers get, and that will allow us to achieve greater outcomes. Negative service experiences in the workplace, that's something that we come up against with employers all the time. Talking to employers who will say to our marketers, approaching them, yeah, we've tried this before with such and such agency, and it really didn't work. We didn't get what we wanted. We didn't get the worker that we wanted, or we didn't get the follow-up that we wanted. We didn't feel supported. No one should ever be saying that. We always want our employers, even if an employer has to let go of one of the job seekers that we've served, we want them to still want to maintain that relationship with us. That's critical. And if they don't want to maintain that relationship with us and don't want to ever work with a person with a disability again because of our involvement, then we've really failed the entire community miserably. So that's something we really need to work on. Failure to incorporate research and best practices. I've read some literature in the last couple of years. Dale DeLeo is a leading writer about supported employment, and he's kind of written some articles around disappointment in the performance, the overall performance. And he attributes some of the issues of not paying attention to what are the best practices with regard to really figuring out who the person is that you're serving and what their needs and gifts are, and really capitalizing on that and facilitating placements in which people have a great degree of investment. And then failure to just recognize the critical interventions. One of the things I've noticed recently in the new change initiative, under the employment domain, every single measurable criteria under the employment domain is something that would occur after a placement had occurred. And I think it's pretty important for folks to realize right from the get-go that a career exploration process and a job search process is integral to anybody's employment. That's how you got your employment. You didn't suddenly get magically placed into a job. You spent a lot of time building towards what you do right now, and I think that needs to be recognized. As far as what are the opportunities in Employment First, this is a great tipping point. As an employment professional and somebody that designs employment services and oversees them and advocates for employment, I feel pretty excited right now at the opportunity before us, because I think Alberta has really been a leader in disability services, and I attribute a lot of that to things like individualized funding. I know occasionally we have individuals that we've served that have moved to other provinces, and they're so deeply disappointed with the resources that are available to them there. So I think Alberta deserves a bit of credit in what we've been able to do over the last few years, and I'd really like to see this go in a good direction. So I think some of the opportunities before us, we can develop effective services that are based in best practice. We can measure the critical outcomes, the outcomes that really, really matter. And this is something that I don't see happening as effectively as it could with any of the funders that we work with. Because really what's important is to measure job satisfaction. And no one really asks us to report on that. No one asks us to report on job satisfaction. I think it should be mandatory that we should have to turn in some sort of job evaluation from the job seeker to prove to the funders that we're finding them something they really loved. Sustainability, I'm sorry, but you can't measure sustainability inside of a 12-month period for people with intellectual disabilities and other barriers to employment. I think that needs to be measured ideally over about a 3-year period, and we need to be there for people. And I think when people want to make career changes, we need to be there for them again. Or when they get a promotion and have new duties, we need to be there to support that. We can't really engage in this place and pray mentality that has been somewhat prevalent in our field over the last 15 years. We have an opportunity to build real connection with the business community. I think that cannot be understated, that in Alberta, we've got an incredibly vibrant economy. We have a lot going on in employment here. We have the lowest employment rates the lowest unemployment rates in the country. There's a lot of opportunity for us here. And if we can do a really good job of effectively serving the business community as our customer, then we can engage them in more significant activities around things like job carving and job sharing. They need to trust us, and they need to know that there's a standard of service that they'll get from us as service providers. I think that is a very significant opportunity before us right now. On the subject of technology, not that this is assistive, but we have the opportunity to develop an Alberta community of practice. And that's, I think in this day and age, we don't have to meet anymore necessarily. A lot of us have spent enough time in the field that we know what it's like to try and round up a group of 20 different people from around the province and have a meeting with them, sort of like herding cats, but the cats have drank all the coffee and we can't just get them together. Well, the lovely thing about technology, things like LinkedIn, if you go to, how many people in this room are members of LinkedIn? Lots of us. Those of you that aren't, you should really consider it. It's a great opportunity to engage in forums about what you do for work. So if you go to LinkedIn and look at, if you do a search for Alberta Employment First, we've actually started a group. So there's a dialogue, there's an online dialogue that anyone can participate in called Alberta Employment First. And it's mechanisms like that that can allow us to really develop a community of practice, because in the field of employment inclusion, we tend to learn most from each other. Everything I've learned from other supported employment professionals or the people that we're serving. Actually, the people that we're serving have taught me almost everything I know, but I'd like to share that with people like you. I think that we've done a really interesting job with people over the years, and I think that they've done a remarkable job of teaching us. I think when you're in a teaching role, it's impossible not to learn, and that's been really valuable. So if we're looking at changing the model, if we're looking at what can we do? What are the opportunities before us? How do we reach that destination? I think first of all, we should identify where we want to go. If I submit a proposal to the federal government saying that I would like $200,000 to serve 30 people in the area of employment inclusion, I'm asked to give them a percentage of results. I'm asked to say, I will ensure that 60% or 70% or 75% of those people will be sustainably employed at the end of that project. I'm asked to speak to return to school outcomes. I think if we're going to develop an employment first goal, we should kind of set where would we like that to be? What are the current employment participation stats for people with intellectual disabilities in Alberta, which is hard to figure out because those stats aren't collected as regularly as they used to. We need to identify the tools and information that we need to get there. We need to think about what are the interventions that are critical interventions in order to facilitate all of this, and how do we support service providers? How do we support the growth and development of these services? How do we help agencies that are constantly being asked to do more with less year after year? In the middle of all of that, and the possibility of having their funding cut, how do we support them to do a better job of this? And I think that we can't just say, this is what needs to happen, everyone needs to go do it. We need to provide some resources to people around the area of service design, rebranding, renovation, whatever you like to call it. And we also need to evaluate our progress with integrity. We started collecting stats on the people that we were serving the very first year that we started providing employment services, and it wasn't because anyone was asking us to do it. It was because we needed to know how we were doing. In any new initiative, you need to be able to evaluate your progress. You need to be able to decide, why is this a problem and what can we do differently to rectify it? And if you don't actually collect some information about how long people are in job marketing, about how long they're retaining employment, about how many people have a job at any given time, if you're not collecting that, it's going to be really hard to improve your position on a year-to-year basis. The job description. I think it's incredibly important to realize that facilitating employment inclusion for people with barriers is not an easy job. It's 5 parts sweat and 5 parts art. It's not easy work. The level of skill that I've found that our staff have to generate ballpark a 70 to 75% ongoing success rate, the level of skill they need to have is significant. So if we look at sort of that career exploration phase at our agency, and I'm not saying that this model is the only model, there's lots of different models that exist. We use career consultants and job marketers to facilitate the whole continuum process. So career exploration, exploring all of the options with people, assessment of strengths, abilities, and interests, resume development. I can't tell you how important resume development is. How many people receive resumes at their current workplace and are involved in hiring? Does a really lousy resume make you want to hire that person? Ever? No. So that's something that we really facilitate with our staff is, go to these resources, learn how to do resumes, check each other's resumes. It might sound like a simple thing, but there's an abundance. Anyone who's received resumes knows there's an abundance of bad resumes out there. And when we're representing ourselves to the business community in Alberta as the employment professionals, I think that we should have resumes that don't have horrific typos and formatting issues all over them. Sorry, that's as much as I'll say about that. I'm clearly a grammar snob. So basic job search techniques, going through with people, what is required to find jobs? What about the hidden job market? What do we do to go look for jobs? An action plan. Is some training required? You want to work in a warehouse? In most warehouses now, you need to use pallet jacks or forklifts. Can we get you some training in that area? When is the next training available? What will that cost? Who will attend that training with you? There's a lot that goes into this process before we ever get a person into a job. Personal presentation and interview skills training. we do so many mock interviews with people, and we review the interviews that went bad, and we learn from every mistake. Understanding workplace culture and employer expectations, it's really critical for the people that we serve to understand what are the rules in that workplace, and they won't always be written down. We have to facilitate integration and some social connection, some social connectivity in that environment in order for people to remain there. This is not easy work, and this is a short list of what's required. So subsequent to that whole pre-employment and career exploration phase, we get into the marketing and employment placement. So what's required there? So now we're trying to hire people that have above average communication and engagement skills, people that can work very effectively with people with disabilities, assessing what are their needs, what are their strengths, what are their aspirations, how are they showing up, how are they doing at accessing our services, because that's going to be a good representation as to how they'll do with accessing the employment. So aside from that, they need to be pitch perfect when they are talking to the employers. They need to sell that. Small and medium business owners in Alberta are incredibly busy people, and their time is at a premium, and it's very critical we don't waste that time. It's critical that we present the client's abilities effectively, the agency services effectively, the business case for inclusive work, and it's essential that we know that. It's essential we know all of that information before we ever meet an employer, and that we can rattle it off with confidence to them. Addressing concerns and resistance with employers. We have marketers that have had the sort of unspoken motto of think of me as the rock in your shoe. They will come back again and again and again. They will find the people that are resistant, and they will try to win them over. And I think that level of persistence and perseverance is it's really important, and it can be a pretty demoralizing job to be rejected frequently. These are some of the highest skill people that I've ever worked with, the effective job marketers. Once people are in the job, what are we doing to make sure that that's sustainable, that the employer is satisfied, that the new employee is satisfied? Connecting people with existing social supports, utilizing coworkers as trainers and promoting mentorship. Miles talked about some really cool things earlier about the little things that people were able to do for him to make life work in a job. It's not rocket science, it's not really difficult, but the employer often needs somebody to give them a leg up on that, somebody that's got the familiarity with accommodations and with the communication style and the personal circumstances of the people that we're serving, somebody to sort of represent and advocate for them in that work environment, and then back off and let that relationship flourish as much as possible. And we still, on an ongoing basis, need to monitor and address performance, social issues, independence, and any required advocacy. We do, in fact, have individuals in jobs that have been there for 5 years and still access us minimally 5 times a week for some type of emotional support or training support, sort of an ongoing issue. So we try not to be in the work environment a whole lot. That's our model. It's not the only model that works. Some people do require more on-the-job assistance than that. We like to see, as Bruce was saying earlier, maybe it wasn't, it was the gentleman from the employment panel, same but different. We like to see the employers, as much as possible, have the same experience they would have with any of their other employees. And I think that that's really relevant. I think that resonates for employers to hear from us. It's not going to be markedly different than anything else you do. You already do this job. We will give you some specialized skills to make this work, and we will be there for you to help you make it work. Some of the critical elements for success at this point. We need to measure employment outcomes in terms of the job satisfaction and sustainability that I spoke about earlier. We need to support services to reinvent and rebrand. All of these things need to happen in our province in order for this Employment First agenda to really, really take off and succeed. I think actually these things need to happen probably right across North America. If we ever hope to have markedly different labor market participation stats for people with disabilities, then we need to address some of the systemic stuff. We also require a range of services to meet the needs of all. I think that's really important for some of the funders and policymakers to recognize that although I have a very successful employment program that I manage, it doesn't meet the needs of everyone. We regularly turn people away saying we don't have the resources to effectively meet your needs. You probably want to go to this other agency down the road, knowing that they do provide ongoing job support. And we're still missing some things. We still have some big gaps in terms of effective pre-employment services. One of the things that we've seen over the years running supported entrepreneurship services, helping people access the job market that way, is that those supported entrepreneurship services help the people that we serve learn about employment, learn about work ethic, learn about workplace social skills, even when the businesses that we facilitated, even when the client-owned businesses that we facilitated ended or failed or the person lost interest, their employability was remarkably enhanced. And we need to look at stuff like that. We need to look at using supported entrepreneurship as a tool to facilitate higher levels of employability. Am I running out of time? I'm running out of time. I have 2 minutes and 30 seconds and she's already staring at me. Okay. I was looking at it. Thank you for maintaining control. Not to repeat myself, but the evaluation and improvement of services is really important. If we look at the business community, no business would ever survive if they didn't regularly reposition and make themselves stronger and make themselves more competitive. And I think we could learn a lot from that ethic in this field. I also think it's really important, once again, to harp on this. I think that in the nonprofit world, it's kind of a strange place to occupy sometimes. You tend to view your customer as the place you get your money, and in this field, it's the opposite. That's actually not where your customer is. Your customer is the employer, and your customer is the job seeker that you're serving. And in fact, you're not getting the money from either of them. So without the employer, there is no outcome. We have to view them as our customer, and we have to recognize and meet their needs much better than we currently do. A community of practice, that's something that has been kicked about in this country for a long time. When I look at the Canadian Association and the Alberta Association for Supported Employment and all of the work that they've tried to do over the last decade with virtually no resources to do it, I'm quite impressed. I'm quite impressed with their annual conferences, with the connection, the resources that they provide. We need to start in this field using technology. We dealt with a conference planner a few years back who was absolutely appalled at the technological savvy of people in the nonprofit sector. He actually indicated on many occasions, I work with farmers that use their computers so much more than you people to connect with each other. People couldn't register online for conferences, things like that. And I'm sure that we're all much better at that now. But it is very important for us to utilize that technology to help develop that community of practice and to learn from each other and each other's mistakes. I don't want to have to make all the mistakes on my own. I want to learn from some of yours, you know. I'm sick of making my own mistakes. So that's it. I have 0. There's a stool.
This is not a health and safety conference, but we do not need an accident. Thank you very much, Sean. Are there questions that people would have for Sean?
Yes.
Over here.
Hi, it's not really a question, but more of a comment. You were talking earlier about sustainability and, you know, not being able to record successes in a 12-month period. I guess my comment is that a lot of the government resources and funding, et cetera, are in fact based on annual contracts or of late 6-month contracts or 3-month contracts. So I guess I'm just reiterating what you're saying, which is you can't measure things in that short a period of time with people with disabilities because they do take longer to learn things. They do take longer to absorb things. And I just hope the government listens to that aspect of what Sean said.
Great. I think you can measure it, you just can't measure it as honestly as I would like us to be measuring it. And I think government is starting to realize that the longer contracts, 3-year contracts, do make more sense. They're less administratively burdensome, and they do facilitate and engender some better outcomes. So yeah, I'm hoping they hear that too.
A question, Sean, from the webcast, from Sasha. Do you have any recommendations to employers or business owners across Alberta around what changes are needed to help communities become more supportive and accepting of individuals with disabilities?
Yeah, I think the employer is our customer. I think we need to serve them the same way that we're serving our client. And when we can do a better job of that, and when we can be more consistent about that, I think they'll be more willing to engage with us about things like job carving. Something that our marketers encounter relatively routinely now is that a lot of employers really want that multitasking person. They don't want to have to alter the job description too much. They view that as different and not something that they really want to support. I'm not saying there's no one out there that will support it, but we're seeing more reticence to it now than we were seeing in 2004. And I think we need to build our reputation with them.
I'm reading into this because some of the comments that I've had in meetings that I've been, and conversations I've been in, that people see a connection between the community's level of support and an employer's ability or willingness to engage people with disabilities. Do you find that connection, or is it just focused on the individual employer?
Yeah, when we are marketing people with disabilities, we will speak to the employer about the business case for inclusion, the fact that diversity brings more creativity to your team, the fact that you heard the gentleman from the panel this morning talking about how having people with disabilities in their workplace actually makes it a better workplace. We hear that consistently from employers. This makes it a better place. But when we're initially trying to talk them into it, what we're saying to them is, we've spent months with this person figuring out what they want to do. You're going to spend 40 minutes with your next interview. Who do you think is going to get better results? And we remind them of that 46% hiring failure rate. So what we're really selling is confidence. We're selling some hiring confidence to the employer.
Thank you. Other question from the right here?
I just want to agree with your comments. I think there's no way we can measure success in such a short time. I work as an employment counselor for the last little while here, and with all the criteria changing from funders and everything, it's hard to provide accurate results in terms of what's working and what isn't. So at the same time, we want to maintain our supports with the clients and maintain our supports with the funders as well. With all the criteria they have, that really actually influences what we consider our best practices with our individuals here. So when there's cuts in place, it's really hard for us to do that. So in terms of developing a trusting relationship, it starts to wither right away. And so it's really not fair to the individuals we're trying to support. So we need to kind of come together as a community and look at how we can measure sustainability and actually look at what's really provided to support these individuals and be able to measure that successfully. And that's just not for people with disabilities, it's for everyone else as well. So it's really a huge impact on our community, and it's awful to see. So we have to figure out how to support these people afterwards within the deaf community as well, as I'm talking about here. So I just really want to agree with your comments, and I'm glad it's out there loud and clear now. That's a really key point for me.
I think those are great insights, and maybe this should be your next speaker. This is how we learn from each other.
Exactly. One of the things I wanted to ask you too is, it struck me as I listened to speakers throughout the day that especially the employers, they said they fell into it by accident. Yeah. And that's sort of part of the journey of innovating a system, of transforming a system, is how do you learn from the people who fell into it by accident so the next people don't have to fall into it by accident one at a time. Do you have any thoughts about how is best to help replicate some of those successes and share on them so that other employers can build on their shoulders?
Sure. I always love listening to an employer panel because I personally get so much out of it. Hearing from the customer, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What are your benefits from this whole process? I'm not sure what else to say about that. I really enjoy the level of commitment that an employer demonstrates once they've agreed to try this out and it is working for them. I love getting those phone calls saying, do you have 6 more of this guy? I can't believe I tried to turn you down. He's the hardest worker. He's the best at engaging customers. We've had employers phone and say that this person makes this a better place to work on a number of occasions. You know, this isn't the most exciting job, and having this person here makes it more rewarding. I think those are really good lessons to learn, and they're good lessons for us to repeat to each other. And I love the fact that the Rotary partnership is utilizing employers to sort of speak about this issue and convince other employers to get on board. We need to devote more attention there. I know in the PDD world that's really weird to provide people with money to talk to employers instead of serving people with disabilities. It's a very directed stream of funding. But the bottom line is you can't achieve those outcomes without engaging those other people, and it's important we address it.
Great. This will be the this will be the last question then from Ruth on the webcast. What's the best first step to build PR and relationship with employers using trade shows, personal barbecues? Where do we start to make it a natural relationship?
Yeah. We address this issue one job seeker, one job at a time, and we represent that person's abilities as best as we can through having spent the time with them, really through a relationship-based service, getting to know who they are, what are their gifts, and then matching that to the exact right job for them and representing that to the employer. That's what we found is the most engaging.
Great, thank you. Join me in thanking Sean. And to give you a small token of our appreciation, I don't know if you were here earlier to hear that what they are is Inuksuks, and we chose the Inukshuk as an honorific because of the symbolism of Pathfinder, because those who go first and leave the sign for others who are following. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm going to stay over here because my stool that they created so I could stand on so you could see me is just tucked off to the side. Just a small bit of news. Brenda Lee has sent her regrets that she won't be able to come back to do the closing remarks. So Gisela Kwok will bring remarks in her stead. But before Gisela comes up, I just have a couple of things to say. One, earlier people talked about Gisela and Tim and Kirby and I being involved in the organization of this. But really, as you all know, there's other people who come to the fore and make it such a success. So I want to say an honor thanks for all the team. Aaron Black, Crystal, Doda, and Amy and her team, especially the AV guys on the side, and Amy's outside, so we can't say thanks to her, but I'd really appreciate if you would join me in thanking them. One other thing is to remind you that all the presentations will be posted on the website where you registered, so you'll be able, or your friends will be able, if you go back and you have other people who say, gee, I'm sorry I missed it, that those web presentations will be on the web in perpetuity, as far as I know. And one final thing. There have been questions who've come in about the cuts, and it's kind of been the undertone of the day. And I just wanted to, in the form of transparency for you, since today is a learning symposium, it was set up for you to get ideas about how things might happen, how other things, people are doing things. Was set up long before the budget, or was conceived at least before the budget cuts came through, that we did not create and will not create a forum for government people to respond to those questions. And so what I've done is added them to, and I've provided those questions to agencies or employers, as you will notice, where I thought it was reasonable for them to answer them. So as with the other questions who we haven't been able to get to today, I will get those answers and have them posted on the website along with all the others. And thanks to the agencies and employers for navigating those questions with grace. What else do I have? I think that's it. So I'll turn it over to Gisela.
Thank you, Sharon. So it is my pleasure to bring the day to a closure today on behalf of Brenda Lee Doyle. So I really hope you had a great day today. Basically, I hope this was informative, this was provocative, and inspirational. I really want to thank all of the speakers today. I think we're really fortunate to have been exposed to the richness and the variety of perspective today. So the service provider's perspective, the community perspective, the employer's perspective, and also the unique personal point of view that someone like Miles brought to us today. And just to say that this was a deliberate approach in our planning process, because we truly believe that this was much needed to bring forward that holistic systemic change that is needed, and to also look at things from a whole person perspective, and to start addressing the issues using that type of lens. We need to hear from our partners. We need to hear from the very people that we serve. And that is why we brought together this broad range of perspective as we go down our transformational journey, as we continue to innovate and find new ways of doing things differently, and as we enhance our collaborative approaches in helping persons with disabilities and mankind to reach their full potential. So I sincerely wanted to thank all of you, both in person and on the webcast, for participating. As a final reminder, I encourage you to continue to send in your comments, your feedback, your thoughts. We need and want to hear from you. Your input is critical. We'll have another jam-packed agenda tomorrow. We'll have people like Cecily Coulson from Washington speaking on Employment First. We're also going to hear from local innovators to talk about technology. And the trade show will be here, will continue to be here tomorrow. So if you haven't had a chance to go and say hello, please do so then. And I hope you all have a fantastic evening, and I look forward to our continued conversations tomorrow. Thank you very much.
And wave to people on the webcast.
Hi there, sorry to bother everyone, but if you're not planning on returning tomorrow, if we could please have your lanyard and your name tag recycled at the exit doors, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much.